Halo is an interesting topic. It seems at one point, definitely in my childhood, it was the game franchise for Xbox, and it was an outstanding trilogy of Halo games. But then they decided to launch Halo 4, and I think things kind of got a little wonky afterwards. Not think, but no, they definitely went lopsided very fast, and I guess a lot of it happened after Halo 5. Because here's the thing, I was not the biggest fan of Halo 4, but I appreciate it for what it was. Felt like a whole new tone to the Halo universe that we have not seen before. And it gave us a really good ending that had a good cliffhanger where there were a lot of possibilities for the future of the Halo universe. It might not have been everybody's cup of tea, but I felt like there was some salvageable stuff in there for everybody who was taking part in the game franchise. And then we move on to Halo 5 Guardians, and I think even then I was still pretty liberal with how I consumed this game. I actually really wasn't too hypercritical about it, but I did hear the other points of view, and a lot of the criticisms that a lot of people had, majority of it was very warranted. Now, do I think it's like a totally hopeless game, completely unplayable? No, but I just don't understand why you only have 3 chief missions and then you make it primarily about Locke. But there were some redeemable parts of the story. I enjoyed talking to the Arbiter again, seeing what he's been up to, but it kind of just seemed like it left at a great cliffhanger where the future was very uncertain with Cortana becoming the new bad guy. And although Halo 5 is far from perfect, I really don't think that it was necessary to rewrite it into what Halo Infinite was. It kind of seemed like they took the fair criticisms of Halo 5 and then just completely knocked everything off the board and then started from scratch and just tried to make a whole different game nonetheless. It still had roots from Halos 4 and 5, obviously, like there's echoes of the 2 games that came before, but I don't believe it was necessary to get rid of Lasky, get rid of Sarah Palmer, get rid of the Arbiter, get rid of Locke, get rid of Fireteam Osiris, Blue Team. I felt like a lot of those characters, Dr. Halsey even, could have carried over into Halo Infinite and told a chapter that would have been good enough to at least redeem a little bit of ground for Halo 5 and 4. I wasn't expecting a perfect game altogether, but, after I saw the first trailer for Halo Infinite, I really felt like, okay, this is going to go on a pretty bad turn. But when I played the Halo Infinite campaign and got in touch with the storyline, I'm going to be honest and say it wasn't as bad of a turn as I thought it was going to. Now, I stand by the point of view that no, we didn't have to get rid of everything. We didn't have to start from square one. And I felt like a lot of the characters that got a little bit too much of a bad rep were kind of just thrown out. Like Locke, I really felt like should have been in the game. I really would have loved to have seen Lasky and Sarah Palmer. I just felt like it was a whole new crew in contrast to the original Halo trilogy crew. One that Master Chief could really vibe with and take on the baddies with. The whole thing just kind of smelt like it was the beginning of something new, but it just felt like they didn't even want to go with that because a lot of the Halo fan base had such harsh criticisms that I felt like 343 overreacted in that sense. And you know what? I stand by that opinion, but what I got and what I was able to play through, I felt had some redeemable qualities to it. Now, I still kind of stand by the fact that I wasn't really quite on board with the whole open world aspect for Halo Infinite, but in an odd way, it really actually did work. As much as I felt was kind of scrubbed from Halo Wars 2, scrubbed from Halo 5, I felt what they gave us instead still kind of worked in its own tone and its own melody. I guess when I dove into the whole dynamic between Echo 216, the Master Chief, and then even the new AI, the weapon, which was Cortana 2.0, I felt like they told a very interesting story that kind of still had elements to the trilogy that they were going for, and kind of worked with it. Because the one thing that this trilogy really spelt out is that the events after Halo 5, everything kind of seemed to be a lost cause. Like all the AIs banding together and taking on the human race were so overpowered that they really didn't stand a chance. And Halo 5 did mark the end of any sort of remnants of the Covenant that still existed. But it was a good way to bring in the Banished, and one thing I kind of realized about the Banished in this game is they kind of had their own feel that was completely separate from any sort of Covenant variation that we fought in the previous games. And that could be felt even in the varieties of weapons that they had, because there really was no Carabine, there was no Needler rifle, there was no any sort of original like brute plasma rifle that that we had. Instead, we got things like the Disruptor, which, to be honest, I wasn't really a fan of. A lot of electromagnetic weapons. Obviously, plasma rifles were still there in their own variation. But everything from the balance of brutes and elites in the Banished kind of showed that it was a whole different chain of command, a whole different technology. The overpoweredness of all their Banshees, ghosts, their choppers, you know. But I didn't really see any signs of the Prowlers from Halo 3. I didn't really see anything from Halo 5, like any sort of Forerunner tech. It kind of just showed that all that was a thing of a past, and here we are to give a whole new tone in an enemy that was programmed to have its own unique feel and battle style, in my opinion. Like, I've never seen Red Hunters before in my life, and you know what? I'm actually kind of glad I did, because those things were overpowered. It wasn't quite the dish that I was expecting to be served, but when I dug into this dish, I actually enjoyed what it was they were serving me out, and it played into the story even more. I like the idea of important Banished targets that you had to face down, like they were mini bosses, knowing that the Banished actually gave a lot of commands to a lot of different alien races. It wasn't a supremacy thing like it was in the Covenant, but it was just like everybody shared the same ideology, and every race of aliens chose to have their own variable threat that could come at you in such a way. Rebuilding up the military against this enemy was another thing with the Valor points, because yeah, you start off with just your typical Magnum sidearm, and then you have a an assault rifle, but if you earn enough Valor points, you could get battle rifles, you could get Bulldogs, which are aka shotguns, you could get the Commando, which is basically a fast-paced DMR, which actually ended up being my favorite weapon in the entire game. The UNSC weapons was very familiar, but it also had its own feel to the game, and the Commando was definitely my favorite weapon. I just used it whenever I got my hands on like a plasma pistol along with a Commando. It was the best combination I kind of had. Now obviously it's known as like the noob combination, but I still enjoyed it. I thought that that was my favorite weapon type to use. But building up that power of your own kind of brand and rebuilding the UNSC from a Halo ring, it seemed, just kind of showed that, yeah, no, Master Chief can turn the tide with just one bullet. Speaking of which, when it showed Master Chief going into space with just one round in his Magnum, I think it just kind of showed hope in a hopeless situation, which I think this game really did a good job of going for. The dynamic between Echo 216 and the Master Chief having to explain about failure to Echo 216 and having him still be able to play his part and find his role in this universe was something special to kind of watch by itself. And the lingering of Halo 5 coming into Master Chief's mind and showing that he had kind of a distrust for any sort of AI, you could tell that the emotional damage of the events of the previous games was still there, and you were always wondering why. We've never seen Master Chief like this, so we're kind of seeing this from the weapon's perspective, even though we're playing as the Chief. But throughout the whole campaign, I'm asking, why is Master Chief like this? Because even for someone like Master Chief, this is so out of character for who he used to be. Then as the cutscenes play out and you see just the damage that Cortana did, he destroyed the Brute's homeworld. She destroyed a UNSC base because it was filled with Spartans. It just showed how far off the cliff Cortana had fallen and just how much of an emotional damage it had on Chief. But with all the emotional breakage that was going on in the machine, it showed an arc of regaining trust, regaining that friendship, and being able to try again. So by the time the final cutscene rolled, I was just kind of ecstatic by that part. Now, obviously, the Endless and the Harbinger, I just kind of felt were such a moot point. And I want to bring another point about the Endless is, they were kind of advertised as the greatest threat, even worse than the Flood. But their presence in the game was so underwhelming that honestly, when I was fighting them, I just basically thought, these are drones, bro. Nah, like for real, anybody who's watched or played any previous Halos knows about the drones, and it had a very drone feeling. I've battled with drones before, and let me tell you, I'd rather fight drones than the Flood. But I still felt like it was its own crescendo that just had its own feel. Now, was it exactly what I'd be expecting of the writers after I finished Halo 5? Absolutely not. I guess what I'm saying is I'm grateful for what I got in an odd way. It was a cloud with a silver lining all around it, and multiple silver linings, because there were parts about this campaign that I genuinely enjoyed. Even if you want to take the story aspect out of it, just an open world Halo with all the battling going on just was all plain old fashioned fun to me. I had fun building up those valor points. I had fun building up the military. I had fun doing everything that was in the game. The bases, the special bosses, all of it just kind of felt into a category where I didn't really, I didn't mind how much of the lore it kind of latched onto. I was just happy to be able to play it because the gameplay overall, man, it had its own unique feel. It just seemed fun to me. It seemed like it was worth my time to play. But I'm talking your ear off, so I want to wrap this all up with just kind of one statement is like, yeah, we don't control how these game developers are going to react to our situations. Obviously, after Halo 5, the Halo fan base was very vocal, and sometimes I felt like they didn't give the game any credit, and they really kind of kicked it down to a tier that it really wasn't at. It really wasn't as bad as everyone was making it out to be, although a lot of the criticisms indented in it were warranted. So obviously 343 was going to, kind of panic and kind of start from square one altogether, because they really heard what a lot of these extreme gamer voices online are saying, and they were thinking, wow, we must have really dropped the ball. I don't think they did as hard as they thought they did. And the reaction and the way Halo Infinite came out and was marketed just really showed, yeah, they're kind of listening to the most extreme voices out there, and they're very much their own biggest critics in that realm. And how could you blame them? Taking on a franchise that's as awesome as Halo and hoping you don't fumble with it, it's pretty likely with all that pressure you're probably going to fumble a little bit with it, and you're not going to handle it the way that the predecessors did. With all the pressure we put on 343, I gotta say they actually did a really good job with Halo Infinite. It wasn't the perfect one, wasn't what I expected them to go with. Honestly, I felt like they should have stuck with the Halo campaign model and just told a story that was going to be a good conclusion to Halo 5 that had probably all Master Chief missions and maybe just, actually mostly Master Chief missions and maybe one or two lock missions. And we didn't get that. We got a full on Master Chief first person story, which I honestly think worked in its own way, shape, or form. But we did put them on the spot, and they handled being on the spot very well. And to that, I gotta say, you know what? Good job, 343 for now. Wasn't the perfect one, but I really appreciate this game for what it was after I had a chance to play it the second time and not just try to rush through it, but really savor it. But that's what I gotta say. What did you think? Leave it in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.